Hello, everybody, and welcome back. It's already day 4 of Advent of Code in Kotlin. So, thank you so much for joining the stream. Grab myself a little bit of a cup here, which I realize is probably a left-handed cup, at least when I'm talking to you in the stream, because otherwise you can't see the cool, like, Kotlin Everywhere logo. Otherwise, that's just facing me. I would still be advertising Popnet, but yeah, I think I'm just gonna have to remember to do this on the left hand. So yeah, same thing as usual. If you are in the chat, make sure you wave hello or something like that, and let us know how today's challenge has gone for you. This is some great tea. I'm currently trying out a couple of different teas. Currently, I'm on something called Winter Bakery, which it's just delicious. It really adds to the whole aura. Yeah, we can do our typical part of housekeeping. Not much has changed since yesterday. We still have 4 leaderboards. Guess we can check in on the 4th leaderboard and see how many people have joined here. Please tell me that's not the right one. I'm sure there's currently a leaderboard that still has... No? Okay, we're filled out. Great. If you haven't added yourself to a leaderboard yet, I did not expect this many people to sign up. That's excellent. Then wait, I guess, a little bit, probably until tomorrow. And Xenia is gonna fill in a 5th leaderboard slot, so you can add yourself. And if you are already added to one leaderboard, don't add yourself to another one. All right. Let's see here. Olaf says it was still too easy today. It takes more time to read than it takes time to code. Okay. All right. Olaf wants a challenge. Thanks for jinxing it for the rest of us. I'm sure that's gonna be just great. Also, in case you didn't notice, by the way, by special request, I'm now today wearing a Christmas sweater. I'm not sure. I think they're generally called ugly Christmas sweaters, but I actually kind of like this one. It's got like a little pixelated snowman, and like a cat, and like the dino from I guess from Chrome. I'm not sure. It also says ho 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 up here. I don't know. Kind of cute if you ask me. Yeah. Everything else is, of course, the same. I am curious if you have watched any of our previous recordings or videos that are linked in the description. Again, if you're on YouTube, if you are one of the few people joining on Twitch, make sure to look on YouTube or go to blog.jetbrains.com and click on those. If you've watched any of those, maybe you found them useful. So maybe share about that in the chat as well. Jonathan says, yep, all of them, which is great. Where to get the Kotlin Cup? That's also a great question. For this Kotlin Cup, you have to travel back in time to, I think, 2018 or so, during the Kotlin Everywhere campaign, which we did together with Google, where we went to different events and had a very global, like, Kotlin event series where people were talking. And this one I got from the Poznan University of Technology, where I gave a talk. I love these cups as giveaways. Now, of course, remember that if you are entered into our giveaway, if you are on our leaderboards, then you can get a little bit of Kotlin swag as well. Specifically, we have t-shirts, stickers, and other surprises. And those are exclusive to Advent of Code. They're not going to be able to get attained in any other way. You can only get them here. So make sure you add yourself, participate in at least 3 of the puzzles, and kind of continue from there. Now, of course, once again, we do have a puzzle to discuss today. And I'm not gonna be able to solve it on my own. That's maybe a bit of an overstatement, but it's going to be much more fun to solve it with someone else. And that someone is Todd Ginsberg, who I asked on how to introduce in the beginning, but honestly kind of just settled on introducing him as an advent of code in Kotlin icon. So just for context, Todd does these wonderful blog posts, and he's done them for a couple of years now on his website, which give detailed instructions on how to solve advent of code in Kotlin. It's essentially this format, but in text form, I guess. Hey, Todd, how are you?
Great. How are you? Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm just excellent. I'm still having a great time. It's day 4. My sleep cycle is now properly adjusted, so I can go to bed at a reasonable hour, and it's not torture anymore to get up at 6 a.m. Which is good.
These come out at midnight where I am. I'm in Eastern U.S. time zone, so they come out at midnight, and that's like 2 hours past my bedtime. So I just do it when I get up and do it about 7 o'clock.
Yeah. I think I will be in the same vein. I'm just this tiny little bit competitive, where I want to be. You know, it's a good reason to get up at a reasonable time for me, and you know, try to compete with other people. Also, I have friends who are getting up at 6 as well, and I have something to prove.
My boss stays up late and does it, and he beats me every single day. So
yeah, I have to admit, I don't think I could do them at midnight. Okay, let me specify. I could not do them at midnight if I was still awake. If I just slept through the day, that would be fine.
Yeah.
But if I had to stay awake, I'm pretty sure I would have a hard time.
This feels like an elaborate campaign on your behalf to get a nap time scheduled in the afternoon.
Yeah, right. That's pretty much. Well, I mean, from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. or like, I guess in my case 7 p.m. So yeah. There's gotta be a break somewhere there.
Yeah, nap time.
So why did you kind of? So I can actually put this on screen as well here real quick. This is your website and your blog. Loving the tagline. Yeah, sounds good.
That was placeholder, and it just stayed.
It just works, right?
Yeah.
It was the same thing. Like if you listen to any of my videos, I usually end them with "take care," and that's something that I kind of did for like 2 or 3 videos, and then I stopped, and then I got a comment on YouTube.
Yeah,
someone saying like, "You didn't say to take care this time," and I was like, "Okay, it's beyond me now. I have to do it. This is my catchphrase."
The community has demanded it. It needs to happen.
Exactly, yeah. So if I scroll back here, I think the first mention of advent of code is in 2017.
Yeah.
So what made you kind of start this?
So 2017, you could see the July of 2017, I started a blog, and I didn't really have a whole lot of stuff on it. And that trend has continued. And I thought, you know, I've got this blog, I'll see how far I can get with advent of code, because that 2017 would have been its 3rd year, right? So 2015 was its 1st year, and I did those in Scala, and then I got into Kotlin in 2016, and I did those in Kotlin and never published. I mean, I put them on GitHub, I think, but I never really did anything like explaining it or anything like that. But 2017, I thought, oh, I've got this blog. Let me see how, like, as a challenge to myself, let me see how many of these I can actually do and explain on the same day, because that was my goal. And I, you know, for the most part, since then, I've hit it. 2019 was a little rough because I had some travel in the middle of December, and I missed a bunch of days, and I filled them in late. And then some days puzzles are just, you know, they're longer than the time I have to do a job and everything else. So they drift into the next day as they get more difficult. But for the most part, I get them done in one day. And I enjoy the challenge of writing code in a way that I can explain it to other people. I mean, you can solve some of these quicker and easier. And, you know, certainly my first stab at these is always really, really messy. But refining it down into a way that I can explain to somebody else is a nice personal challenge for me. So that's what I do.
I think at least with the part of like condensing it down as a big part for me as well, because spoiler alert for people, the solution that I show on stream is also not exactly the solution that I use to get the answer.
No.
Yeah, I know that's crazy. I'm sure there's someone out there who has this image of me just being able to spit out code that makes perfect use of the standard library everywhere. It's not the case. I also, it's the same thing as I said yesterday. It's this kind of idea of like red-green refactor almost. It's like we get to the solution and then we figure out how we can represent this in nice and good-looking code.
That's why I have 4 tests with each of mine, two for each of the example inputs, and then 2 from my input. And that's why I can just crank through it if I decide, okay, well, I should use this instead of that, or, this is really taking a long time. I should refactor this. At least I have the tests. I don't go into any more detail than generally those 4 tests.
Yeah. So I have to say, I'm a huge fan of just the blog posts in general, and they are part of my like Advent of Code routine. So essentially my days look like this. I get up at like 6 in the morning, I solve the challenge, I refactor the challenge, and then sometime like in the afternoon, I get a little ping on Twitter about Todd posting his solution. I'm like, oh, okay, let's see. And then I slam my desk and I say, how does he do it? Yeah, you usually bring a very nice, I very much appreciate your second opinion on kind of how to solve these problems.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. That's nice. Yeah, you covered it the other day, and I got on day 2, I got a mix of reactions of, oh boy, that's clever, and oh boy, that's cheating.
Yeah.
So you get what you get out of it. So.
Right. Yeah. I thought it was kind of fun.
Yeah.
It's
solved the problem.
If you can think of it, right?
Yeah.
Well, I guess there's a line somewhere to be drawn, because
Sure.
I saw this afternoon on Hacker News that apparently someone got the first place on the leaderboard by feeding this the problem statement to GPT-3.
That's amazing, right?
Which is, on the one hand, really cool, but on the other hand, I'm not sure if that specifically is a part of the spirit of the competition.
Yeah. Probably not. It's an interesting like meta challenge though, right? Like taking up a slot on the leaderboard of the GPT or GTP3 answer, I think is maybe a little uncool, but the fact that you could do it, I think, is interesting.
Well, I feel like they probably just, Eric needs to come out with a way to designate bots as bots, so you don't feel quite as bad.
Yeah, that might be. Yeah, put a little symbol next to them that somebody automated this.
Yeah. Jürgen says, of course we do red-green refactor. Why should we do these puzzles in other ways than our day-to-day work? Opinions on that?
I think this is very unlike my day-to-day work. I don't really run into problems like this.
What, no elf backpacks?
No, tons of elf backpacks in the payment industry. You'd be surprised. But, just puzzles like this that are well-defined, right? I mean, the good thing about Advent of Code is if he says the input is in this range, the input is always going to be in that range. The input is never, ever out of, like, you might read more into what he's saying than he actually does, but the inputs are always correct and regular. And I think that's one of the things that you can just drop a lot of code that you wouldn't normally write, like checking and assuming things are the correct length. And as a professional programmer, you'd probably be more defensive about it, whereas in this you don't have to.
Yeah, I think we had this one yesterday as well, where someone in the chat also advocated for more defensive coding, which is an absolutely good idea. And I think as a practice, even as like a practice run or as an exercise, makes perfect sense to see where you can fit it in. But it is the impressive part is that you have a super well-defined like input set.
And that's the impressive part. Like one of the impressive parts about Advent of Code is if you think about it, Eric is writing 24 or 25, whatever days worth of puzzles and all of the unique inputs for them. So he's got a parallel set of programs to write all of the input files that are completely valid. And it's never the problem. Like you go on Reddit or whatever big discussion forums and people say, I think my input's wrong. And it's like, it's never the input. It's just an incredible feat every year that he does it.
Oh, certainly. So just for a little bit of context for anyone who wants to see a little bit of background on this, Eric Wastel, the inventor of Advent of Code, has this behind the scenes talk, which you can also find on YouTube, where he also talks about how much work goes into preparing this whole campaign, which is, spoiler alert, it's 11 months of preparing and then 1 month of running it, and it turns out amazing every single time.
Yeah, it's an amazing amount of work. I mean, I complain that Advent of Code is like having a second job for 25 days out of the year, but I couldn't imagine the amount of work that he puts in addition to all his other commitments with family and work and whatever else he's got going on. It's incredibly impressive.
Oh, certainly. It's also quite impressive actually to see the architecture behind all of this. And talk about scalability concerns in a very refreshing way that is much unlike the large architecture diagrams that you see people usually pull up when they want to show something on cool slides.
Yeah.
And be really fancy.
I think he hit those early, right? He hit scaling problems really early. I think he didn't. Mm-hmm. I don't think he anticipated 2015 would be as big as it ended up being. So,
yeah, it's a pretty great experience. So Xenia also just shared, by the way, that we are gonna set up a new leaderboard very soon. So make sure you take a look at that if you haven't entered yourself. Okay. Well, I think for us, it's probably too late to get any points in the leaderboard, but we can still discuss day 4, because that's why we're here today. So I'm just going to start once again. I very much like doing this dramatic reading now. So we're just going to do that. And then we'll see where it goes. I have to admit, I have this very enticing looking like Christmas hat, which...
Yeah. No, the reading will be much better with it.
Yeah, I feel like this adds a little bit more flair. There we go.
Yeah.
Okay.
It always gives your voice more gravitas already. I mean, you've only cleared your throat, and I can tell it's going to be 100 times better.
I think so, too. All right. We are now looking at day 4, camp cleanup. Space needs to be cleared before the last supplies can be unloaded from the ships, and so several elves have been assigned the job of cleaning up sections of the camp. Every section has a unique ID number, and each elf is assigned a range of section IDs. However, as some of the elves compare their section assignments with each other, they've noticed that many of the assignments overlap. To try to quickly find overlaps and reduce duplicated efforts, the elves pair up and make a big list of the section assignments for each pair. Your puzzle input. For example, consider the following lists of section assignment pairs. Then we get a couple of assignment pairs, where for the first few pairs, list means within the first pair of elves, the first elf was assigned sections 2 through 4, so 2, 3, and 4, while the second elf was assigned sections 6 through 8, so 6, 7, and 8. The elves in the second pair were each assigned 2 sections, so that's 2 and 3, and 4 and 5. The elves in the third pair were each assigned 3 sections. One got sections 5, 6, and 7, while the other also got 7 plus 8 and 9. This example list uses single-digit section IDs to make it a little bit easier to draw. Your actual list might contain larger numbers. Visually, these pairs of section assignments look like this. I'm not going to read that one out because it's clearly visual. And some of the pairs have noticed that one of their assignments fully contains the other. So, for example, 2 through 8 fully contains 3 through 7. That's a tongue twister. And 6 through 6 is fully contained by 4 through 6. In pairs where one assignment fully contains the other, one elf in the pair would be exclusively cleaning sections their partner will already be cleaning, so these seem like the most in need of reconsideration. In this example, there are 2 such pairs. In how many assignment pairs does one range fully contain the other? Okay, that's gotta save the energy of the reading cap. Okay, Todd, what do we have here in front of us?
The first thought is it's amazing we ever get Christmas presents at all with this sort of disorganization.
Well, we save it every year, right?
Yeah, every year we get 50 stars and we save it somehow. It's a good thing we're around. So the first thing I thought of when I saw this was Kotlin's got an int range. I'm going to use an int range. And there's a bunch of ways you could approach that. I think you could do pairs of ints, you could do int ranges, you could write your own class that encompasses those. I went with int range in my solution because I felt like it was the spirit of what we're talking about. And honestly, if we went with a pair, the type signatures get really complicated really quickly, and I would just type alias it down to something that sounds like int range. So I just went with int range on mine. Interestingly, this problem is an awful lot like an interview question that my workplace used to give. I've been at my company for a cumulative total of about 15 years now, so I took a little break, but I have been there quite some time, and this is one of the early interview questions that I was so convinced that I bombed, that I wouldn't get the job. And so I thought that was an interesting aspect of this, of all days that I was going to appear on your thing is like, oh, this blast from the past that I range overlaps, that I've asked so many people how to solve that problem. So that was fun.
Yeah. Would you say that over the years with a bigger and better standard library, problems like these have become easier to solve?
Yeah. One of the things I love about Kotlin is the standard library. When I write my solutions, sometimes there is an easier, more direct way to write the solution to the puzzle. But I like to go and say, okay, well, I could do this with something in the standard library that's functionally equivalent or just a little bit of a trade-off. And I like to highlight things that are in the standard library because it is different. If you're a Java programmer, it is different than Java's. But I think it's more fully featured. I think, in Java, we're all used to pulling in the Apache Commons to get things done that are not in the Java standard library. And the Apache Commons library is excellent as well. But this, I've rarely had to do this in Kotlin. Today, I did have to write two extensions on an int range that I was surprised kind of weren't there, but maybe you have a different view about what int ranges are.
Well, maybe let's have a look at your solution then,
Okay.
and we can find out where we need to improve the Kotlin standard library in the future. Because for the record, I actually do agree. Yes, and I guess since I kind of merged this part into my template here, your solution, I can just explain that in the main function, all we do is create this day4 class object with the regular input and call the solve part one function. Okay. All right, all yours then. Okay,
we're doing this the remote driving thing, and I'm not sure that I'm seeing the same thing you are, but
I think I can. Can I force to follow you? Here you are. I think.
If I highlight that, do you see it?
Wonderful.
Okay, cool. So, starting at the top, usually I have a unit test that drives this, and so generally I've got a helper that does this part for me. It does the read line, it loads the file, does the read line, and I can, in today's example, we're going to pull it in as just a list of strings. So each string in the list is one row from the input that we're given for our puzzle. And since we're not going to use that input anywhere other than the initial parsing, we won't declare that as a property on day 4. We'll just declare it as an argument to the constructor of day 4. And this generally on the puzzles varies day by day if we can use the input as is or not. So the first thing we're going to do is parse it. Like I said, I'm going to represent each of the ranges as an int range, and then because there's 2 of them on each line, there's a pair of those int ranges, and then because there's multiple lines, there's a list of those. Now,
yeah, makes perfect sense that you would not choose, for example, a pair of ints. Then because then you're really kind of stacking things inside.
Because then you get like list of pair of int of int of pair of int of int, and it just gets it was too much. I mean, ideally, so when I do these for my blog and for this, I leave all the types on because I like to illustrate to people what the types are. But you could just as easily take that off, and Kotlin is smart enough, and even IntelliJ is smart enough to say, hey, that's what that is. If you have that turned on, so you could leave them all off if you find the types on this ugly in every one of these, because these are all they're all single expression functions. So you could just leave those off if you find the types distracting. So anyway, we're going to parse this input, and we're going to do it with take our raw input, we're going to map it, and we're going to say for each row of input, I want it as ranges, right? As a pair of ranges. And so going from the, I guess, top down as ranges, we'll break up one of the input strings into two halves. So the left half, the left elf and the right elf in range, so to speak. And I'm using substring before and substring after from the standard library, which I think are really great. They're really great additions to the standard library. I think without having to, without those, you'd end up saying, well, I want to go find the first instance of something. Give me the index of the first comma, and then I'm going to split on, that many characters or whatever. Or you split and you get a list of responses back, and then you've got to pull the things out of split. I think for me, this was nice because I just get the string that I care about and I don't have to deal with lists or
if you want to have just a straight up one-liner like you have here, that helps you out.
Yeah, and you could be more efficient by doing split and getting list and doing a let or something over it. But
sure,
I'm trying to go for clarity. Go for it.
Actually, in this case, you could even you could use a destructuring declaration on split.
Somebody on Slack did this with one line. He pulled it. He mapped them all the strings, split on comma and hyphen, and then mapped them all to ints, and then destructured the list. And it was really in just one. He does the whole thing in one line. It was really clever.
Yeah. Oh, Jonathan also says I did a split on destructuring, but that is maybe nicer. Yeah, I think there's a trade-off here, because obviously here you have to repeat the delimiter, and for the other one you can't write it in a single line. So you gotta see what you're looking for.
I like destructuring, and when it occurs to me to actually use it, I do use it. But old habits die hard, and destructuring is not something that is something I had run into before a few years ago. And so it's never the first thing I'd like, I can destructure this. It's still one of those things that as a programmer I'm learning when to think about when to insert that into my code. Whereas a lot of times I use it, it's IntelliJ saying, hey, you could destructure this, that.
Yeah.
Like, you're right, I could.
The other addition to that is, of course, that Kotlin's destructuring, being position-based, is a little less powerful than what you might have in other languages with name-based destructuring, especially if you're going back to like data objects, and you start to destructure those, you can get in the weeds pretty quickly.
Yeah, I mean, it's nice to have it versus not have it. Let me put it that way. But there's rough edges on every language, where you run into parts that are possible but unclean everywhere. So, but destructuring works here. I just never think about it. That's something I got to work on. So at any rate, once we have each of the strings, the left half and the right half of the total expression, we say, I want this left half as an int range. And don't know how computers work. We have a left half and a right half as an int range. And so this is another extension function on string that returns an int range. And what it does is it does the same kind of trick as we just did. So we split on the delimiter of hyphen on both sides, and then we range them together with the ... operator, which will create us our int range. So at this point, coming back up here, we should have a list of pairs of int ranges. So each pair represents the left half and the right half of the expression. And so then, like, one thing I did consider is these two functions seem generally useful, and we could put them in an extensions KT file or something like that, and not make them private to this class. But I figured at some point, if I need them again, I'll do that. I'm super bad at guessing what they're going to be doing at the next puzzle, and I have refactored so many things in advance over the years that I just have burned so much time on that I've kind of made it a policy to not refactor anything until I need it. So I'm going to leave them here. And the same things we're going to write two extension functions on int range in a second. I'm going to leave them here too, until we find a need for them again, and then I'll just come back and pull them out and refactor them. So once we have this, we can solve part one if we know how int ranges fully overlap one another. And this is one of those things I was a little bit surprised, not terribly surprised, because fully overlaps is a weird concept, I guess, that int range just doesn't have this concept of is this range fully contained in this other range? But thankfully, Kotlin has extension functions, and you can make it look like it's always been there. So we'll write fully overlaps. And that's a fairly straightforward, there's really only one way that can happen, right? Is if my beginning is at least your beginning mark, and if my end mark is at least your end mark. And so, there's two ranges, and they can only fit together two ways. They can be identical, or one can be smaller. But if one of them has a larger bounds on one end and not the other, then they just can't overlap. So they can't be fully overlapped. And I declared this as an infix because I thought it looked more fun to be able to have spaces in here. You can write that without it. I don't know.
It's like a little DSL.
I never know when to do infix, so I just kind of sometimes I feel like this looks cool, and sometimes I don't. But
it's a feeling thing, right?
Yeah.
If it's like an operator, I very much like having infix functions. That's kind of my rough rule to go by. It's like, would I overload an operator if I had the chance here?
That's a good heuristic for that. So anyway, we've got fully overlaps. The problem with fully overlaps is that it's not, I guess, reflective or whatever. So
symmetric. I don't
symmetric. Know. Sure. I was bad at math. It's one of those math concepts. It does. So A fully overlaps B does not imply B fully overlaps A, or it doesn't test for both. Let me put it that way. So we have to run it twice, and so we can use our count here on ranges, which I love this. I can say count just says how many of these predicates are true, given this set of inputs.
Yeah.
And that gives us our answer. Part one.
This is much more elegant than the alternative, which would be, I guess, mapping two numbers and then summing them, or straight up folding. This is you could map to 1 or 0 and kind of do sum at the end. There's a lot of different ways to do this. I think count is really like one of those things that somebody really put some thought into this, of like, this is a very common thing for developers to say how many of the things in the set of inputs match a predicate. We do it all the time when, we're probably so used to just doing it the other way around that something like this comes along and like, oh yeah, I can use this all the time. Why wasn't this always here? So I like that. And then part 2, really, really similar, uses the same concepts. Hold up. We haven't even introduced. I haven't put on my hat yet. We don't even know what part 2 is yet.
Oh, man, I'm sorry.
At least not in the lore.
There might not even be a part 2 as far as we know. Exactly. Did we want to...
I get surprised every day. I'm like, what? There's another star?
I am so bad at predicting what he does in part 2. I don't think I've ever guessed right on what he wants to do in part 2.
I think I've guessed right. Well, I've guessed right in just a few cases where it was very clear that the second time around, it was just going to require an algorithm with the correct runtime complexity.
Yeah, here's a billion of them, now do it, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's like, oh, here's this huge graph. Find something of length 3. And I'm like, oh, I can guess what's in the next. Find one of 300. I'm like, okay. Yeah, okay, that one. Those I can't see coming. The other ones...
I was positive he was going to do, like, what spot has the most overlaps today. Because that's, if you're an elf, that's kind of what my concern would be. But I was wrong again.
Yeah. Okay, let's see here. Part 2. It seems like there is still quite a bit of duplicate work planned. Instead, the elves would like to know the number of pairs that overlap at all. In the above example, the first 2 pairs... 2 through 4, 6 through 8, and 2 through 3, 4 through 5 don't overlap, while the remaining 4 pairs, 5 through 7, 7 through 9, 2 through 8, 3 through 7, 6 through 6, 4 through 6, and 2 through 6, 4 through 8 do overlap. I'm sure that one was very helpful for me to read out.
I'm glad you had the hat on for that. That was...
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I think it was the little bubble at the end that really saved it.
Yeah.
Yes, the first one overlaps in a single section, which is 7. The second one overlaps in the
You're not going to read the details again? You're just saying the second one and the first one and the second one?
5 through 7, 7 through 9 overlaps in a single section. 7, 2 through 8, 3 through 7 overlaps in all of the sections. 3 through 7, 6 through 6, 4 through 6 overlaps in a single section. 6, 2 through 6, 4 through 8 overlaps in sections 4, 5, and 6. Thanks for making me do this.
No, it was good. It was a better product as a result.
Yeah. So in this example, the number of overlapping assignment pairs is 4. And how many assignment pairs do the ranges overlap?
921.
Okay. Yeah, spoiler. Okay. Okay, I gotta save the end. This thing is now recharging for tomorrow.
Yeah. It needs a full day's recharge.
Pretty.
Can you use it for other? Could you use it for other dramatic readings throughout the day if you had to?
I think so, but then I would have to really limit the dramatic. Like if it was a short problem statement, probably. If it's a graph problem tomorrow and I need to read out a graph, it better be fully charged.
Yeah. I get that.
So part 2.
Okay, so part 2, very, very, very similar to part 1. All the parsing still makes sense. We don't have to do anything different with parsing. The only thing we have to do is write this overlaps function. So does this first range overlap at all with the second range? And this is the fun part that we used to ask people for an interview questions. And when I first saw this question, I think if you draw it out, there's 4 possible ways that ranges can overlap one another. Mm-hmm. And my first solution to this, when I first got this interview, was a giant if statement of all 4 ranges, and then we worked down to but what if you do this? What if you do this? What if you do this? And you get down to this, which doesn't seem super intuitive to people at first, but basically, if my first element is less than or greater than your last element, and your first element is less than or equal to my last element, then our ranges overlap. And this one is reflexive or whatever. If A overlaps B, B overlaps A in every case. So we basically do the same thing we did in part 2. We use count, and instead of saying A fully overlaps, first overlaps second and second overlaps first, we can just say if the first range overlaps the second range. Nice. Then we're done. This is the one that I was more surprised that doesn't exist in the standard library. This fully overlaps I get, because that's maybe not super useful, but I'm wondering if maybe I just think of ranges as different things. Like I think in Kotlin they're mostly considered feeds for functional expressions or iterations, and I'm wondering if maybe I'm treating them more like sets.
Yeah, I'm actually not that sure, because they are just, at least for containment checks and stuff, they are just more performance sets, right? And I know for a fun fact, I was talking to a colleague earlier today who was solving these problems in Rust, who found out that unlike in Kotlin, a range in Rust, or their equivalent of that, at least the built-in type, behaves like an iterator, which means once you've kind of looked through a range to see if something is contained, it's just empty then afterwards. Something along those lines. Like you can use it once. I'm sure you can
get used to that eventually, but that's something that would bite me.
Yeah, it was that was I think a little tricky for him as well. Shout out, by the way. Okay, cool. Yeah. Then we can take a look at my solution, and I think I've said it before. I'm not sure if it was on camera. Yeah. Slam the desk. Make sure to see Todd's better solution. But it's kind of similar. So, couple of things. First of all, I just read, of course, the input lines here. And for part 1, I decided, well, we're gonna have to split this stuff somehow. I've mentioned this part beforehand. We're gonna do just the split using a single split function and then destructuring declaration. And then, since these are 2 different ranges, I also defined a 2-range function, which once again just uses a split this time with the dash to generate an int range. Isn't that crazy? So that's pretty much the same. What's a little bit different is the way that I count them, or I didn't choose to create a custom infix function, but instead I decided, you know what, I can overload the operator function contains.
Ooh, that's clever.
Because I figured, I think that's semantically correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I like that. That's much nicer.
So this part gives me the nice little snippet of A in B or B in A, just
That's
like
nice.
we saw right beforehand. For part 2, I decided I wanted to get something done as quickly as possible. So first of all, I copy-pasted this part. As you can see, this is something that we could, of course, refactor. But I am acutely aware of the advice that Pavel has given me on the first day, which is you probably don't want to start interpreting your input too early, otherwise you're going to have to go back and refactor things.
Yep.
Which is why I kept it like very basic. So I just brought that down here. Of course, you could factor these out now. And I just said, all right, since an overlap is just a list where any element exists in both lists at the same time, let me just start iterating the first int range and see if it also appears in the other range. And of course, the good part, at least from a runtime complexity thing perspective, is that any terminates once it has found the first element. I'm not counting them and making sure it's greater than.
Well,
than
and these
0.
ranges aren't massive either, right? They're not.
Yes.
It's not like we're dealing with longs or big ints or whatever. They're ints. They're not
exactly.
They're not huge. Even the inputs are not huge, right?
So. A little peek into the input data set shows us these are all roughly between 0 and 100. They're 2-digit numbers, so nothing all that crazy.
I think that like the other approach a lot of people seem to be doing is casting these to sets and doing overlaps that way. I think that works for small inputs like this. It would be. And again, my take on Advent of Code is you're writing for Advent of Code, not a general solution. So this works great.
Yeah, and of course, then as I said beforehand, I guess we could have our ranges kind of specified as this first part of our mapping. And look at that! Now this is a signature that I instantly recognize because we've talked about exactly this hint beforehand.
Yeah, it works.
And of course we can bring this one down here, and then at least it doesn't look quite as chaotic. It doesn't have as many things. And if I try really hard, I can probably also turn it into a one-liner. So look at that.
Very nice.
Beautiful. So
yeah, we ended up with pretty similar things in isolation. I think you're in overload. I think is really elegant.
Yeah, I'm really excited about the fact that there is an overlap solution that you can just do like this, because obviously more performant. That's just a number or two number comparisons.
Yeah, I mean, and to be honest, I probably wouldn't have come up with that if I hadn't been using it as an interview question. I'm not that clever. But it was something I kind of already knew. When I woke up and I saw the puzzle, I was like, oh, I can do this. I know where this is going.
I feel like I'm getting flashbacks of, wasn't there another puzzle maybe last year where it was 3D cubes that were overlapping?
Yeah.
I think there was something like this.
I think that was
the first part. Yeah, I think that was the first part where I struggled to solve it, or maybe didn't solve it at all.
I struggled, and then I came up with the idea of anti-cubes, and I had cubes with positive numbers, but I would notate them as negative volumes, and I would put them all in a list and then added all the volumes together. I think that's how I solved that.
That sounds tricky. If you want to learn more about that part, I guess go check out Todd's blog.
I've got a blog on it apparently, so we can check that out. But I remember running it, like seriously just being so frustrated with that one, and then I went on a walk and something clicked, and I was like, oh, I can run back and go do this.
Yeah. Isn't that the best part? Honestly, that's kind of why I enjoy AOC the most.
Yeah.
Is when the click moment.
Yeah, and that's the best problem solving technique for any problem is just you have to stand up and walk away. As frustrated as you think you'll be by doing that, as painful as it feels, like that is always the right answer. Just get up and walk away and do something else that you enjoy, and then your brain will relax and you'll get it.
Oh yeah, man. But I'm still honestly quite happy with the difficulty level so far.
Yeah.
Right.
So far, we haven't had to like redo somebody's PhD thesis from first principles yet. So we'll get there.
Yeah. I mean, I remember some people in the beginning said that they were looking for a little bit more of a challenge, but don't worry.
Yeah,
Be
but
patient.
He's. If I had to guess, I don't know him, but if I had to guess, he's trying to ease us into it. If you start with a wall and a brick wall on day one that everybody runs into, people won't enjoy it, right? So part of it is teaching you, hey, I'm going to give you input and you're going to have to parse it, and part of it is this is how you set up. The first ones are maybe intentionally easy, so you get drawn into it and you get setups done correctly.
And the other part is, of course, luring you into a false sense of security.
Yeah, and then he springs the trap on you with, like Dijkstra's algorithm with 3 billion nodes or something.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's great fun. What about day 18 last year? Someone asks.
Day 18. What was day 18 last year?
If you know that by heart, I'm gonna lose my mind.
I don't. I don't know day 18.
That makes
I honestly, off like this time next week, I don't even remember what day 3 was.
This is pretty.
Yeah. I'm not a front end guy, so that took me I hope you appreciate that. That took me a really, really long time. Oh, the snailfish one. Oh man, this was hard.
Snailfish. Oh, okay. Again, I'm not sure if I have a solution for that one. So, but yeah, the answer is there's
the answer was 7
on it.
Yeah, the answer was 7.
The answer was 7.
No, that was really hard. And I did traveling again, and apparently, yeah, I remember this. I remember I ran into a problem with this one, and it took me a really long time to get past it. But this may have been one of those ones where I didn't actually get to publish it on the day of, because
apparently this one was late, huh?
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, that's all okay.
I mean, I could erase that now. You'd never notice difference, but
exactly. But we're not doing revisionist history here.
No, for sure. No, I mean, it's you get what you put into this, right? I mean, some people compete on time, and some people use it as a reason to learn a new language or to get better at a language. And I just like the mental challenge of having to explain myself at the end of it.
Yeah.
Everybody gets something different out of it. If you find going and throwing the input as is through a machine learning algorithm and getting the answer, if you find that interesting, then cool. I'm glad you're happy. Likewise, if you try to do code golf or whatever, something I'm not into or can do it in 2 seconds, or one of the competitive programmer people, which I am very, very impressed with. I can't do that. I'm impressed at that. And if you get something out of that, I think that's cool. That's a good thing. Everybody gets something different out of this, right?
Oh, certainly. Yeah. For me, Advent of Code is something so special as well. Like I generally don't look up solutions unless I've solved it myself. So if I'm not sure, I don't think Advent of Code like profiles are public. But you'll see that I haven't solved all the problems for last year or for the year before. There are some where I was just like, all right, with the time that I have allotted to this, I can't address these right now. And I'm hoping, I have this glimmer of hope that sometime in the future, maybe a smarter, slightly older Sebastian will be able to come back to these and be like, oh yeah, of course. Now I know this.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if it will ever happen, but
the puzzles are there. You can go back to 2015 and solve those now if you want. I mean, that's 7 or 8 years old now, but so you can. It's not like there's a time limit on this. If you just find one not appealing for whatever reason, if you don't like the story, or you want to help elves today, or whatever it is, you hate Christmas, or you just don't like the algorithm, so you could just put it down for a while and come back.
Yeah.
Heart grew 3 sizes that day when you came back and solved it.
Yeah. I have to admit, though, I find myself the most motivated the day off. Very, very clearly. There's something about the ceremony of doing it for me first thing in the morning and getting this rewarding thing. I don't think we've ever showed a picture of me doing them, because it's usually me in my bed, like with bed hair and just kind of typing on the laptop. But yeah, it's just a nice little ritual. To get started in the day.
It's a fun ritual, but I'm kind of glad it's only 25 days long, because I don't think I could do this every single day.
Yeah.
Because it's just it's like a second job for part of it. Like when they get complicated, you can spend a lot of time on some of these.
I mean, especially since you're also explaining them all, right?
Yeah, and I've got a job, so
yeah.
I've got to go do that, and I work with people around the world, so I've got to start real early, so they can end their day late, and so usually when I wake, because the puzzles for me come out at midnight, and that's just so far past my bedtime that I'm just not going to stay up that late. So I do them when I get up, and I'm relatively productive then. So
yeah,
sometimes I'd have to do them in the afternoon.
When
it gets done when it gets done.
When you're the most fresh, so to say, almost.
Yeah.
For me, it's the 6 a.m. probably isn't my freshest, but it's I make that sacrifice.
So do you at JetBrains? Do you have an internal leaderboard that you're all like beating on each other about, or what's the internal thing like at JetBrains with Advent of Code? Because I know you've got this, and you've got the leaderboard off of Slack, and you've got the other leaderboards for the contest. But what's it like really, really like at JetBrains? The secret stuff.
The secret stuff. You can look behind the scenes. Well, I think mostly it's us staring in awe at the people who are literal world champions in competitive programming.
Yeah.
Like solving, you submit a solution and it's like, oh yeah, they already got the second part also done.
Yeah, it's amazing, right? Your language lead can just crush anybody that he wants to on these, just in time or complexity or whatever. That's a good sign you're in the right hands.
Yeah, pretty much. Apart from that, there's a lot of people participating, people who want to become better, QA people who want to dive deeper into the languages that they're using in the IDE that they're supporting. Just our regular software engineers because they're having a good time.
That's cool.
Yeah, and of course, since we are on the one hand, of course, a Kotlin and Java company for our IDEs. There's a lot of people who understandably have enthusiasm for whatever their respective languages that they're building an IDE for. So they're building solutions with that. They're trying to broaden their horizons. So that's really
that's cool.
It's definitely people going on there.
That's very cool.
Yeah. So if you wanna join our private leaderboard and also get this really cool sponsor tag, then go apply at JetBrains. That's one of the big perks is the sponsor tag. Yeah, exactly. How about you?
You're in a lot of leaderboards. Wow.
Yeah, I okay. So these are I have to be in the leaderboards. So because otherwise I won't be able to distribute all the cool prizes that we're handing out, like the T-shirts, and the stickers, and more things. And there was also a new leaderboard that was published just a little bit ago, which I apparently can show on stream like this.
Oh, that's cool.
That's very cool. But you're probably not gonna type that out. Just from the screen. So let's see if Xenia has gone the full way and also updated the blog post, which she has, so you can join the 5th leaderboard. Don't join this if you're already in one of the other leaderboards. But do join it if you didn't manage to get in somewhere else. And it doesn't matter if you're finishing first, or if you're finishing somewhere in the middle, or if you're just doing like 3 of them. As long as you do a couple of them, you're automatically entered. As long as we have
3 full days, right? Is it 3 days? You've got to participate. What is it like? What 3 of what? 3 stars?
I
don't want to make you be a lawyer here if you don't know off the top of your head.
I think 3 days. But okay. Generally, the point is we want to see 3 attempts. Is really what it's there.
Like, we're on day 4, so you can just go back and watch 3 of these and code along, and you can get 3 days.
Yeah, that's true. That's a great way of inflating view numbers. I'm okay with this trade. I am okay with this.
I'm just saying, if you're really new to Kotlin and programming and you're stuck on day 4, going back and typing what the other person typed is not a terrible strategy to learn how to do it.
Yeah. Certainly you can check out all the previous recordings, and of course make sure that you tune in for the following days as well, because we are going to continue this for at least 6 more days, which
I like how you cut it off like right when it starts to get really difficult. You're gonna cut it off at like day 10, because then you know the difficulty is gonna ramp up, and it's gonna be 4 hours of just banging your heads against the desk trying to solve a problem.
Yeah, I feel like at that point potentially it might also not be quite as easy to explain these problems without maybe a piece of paper or a little graphic.
Yeah.
Which, while of course our production value is incredible, we don't want to kind of overstress those parts. And of course, I mean, what's the point if there's going to be a blog post from Todd anyway, right?
Let's hope so.
Yeah. So no matter how you look at it,
past performance does not indicate any future results, right? Whatever they say in financial statements, right?
Yes.
Does not guarantee future results. So we'll
Exactly.
try. I'm trying my hardest.
Exactly. But what I'm doing is current pressure increases probability of future results. I'm just making big claims on your behalf. So
yeah, it'll work.
Yeah.
They'll get up there eventually.
Exactly.
I'm optimistic about it.
Wonderful. So if you would like to, let's actually see here real quick. Do our repos need to be public from the start, or can we make them public before the 25th? You can probably make them public until the end of the year, because I'll be on vacation for a little bit before I start counting all the results. So yeah, if by that time you have them already and public, then that's perfectly fine. You can keep your Advent of Code solutions proprietary until then. And if you make
the
$1
sharing
billion
them is the best part.
Yeah.
I mean, that's one of the great joys of it, is going on. I like going on the Kotlin Slack. There's an Advent of Code room in there. I like going in there and seeing what people do. And there's this year there's a lot of people in there.
So yes, this one we've also shown a couple of times. If you are not in the Slack, make sure that you go to, you'll find it, but slack-chats.kotlinlang.org is one of the entry points. You can just click join the conversation. You can also browse a couple of points out here already, and you'll find links of this very stream inside here, which I'm not gonna click because I feel like that's gonna
rent a hole in the universe. We can't.
Exactly.
Do that.
I don't want a singularity happening.
No, not because of this anyway.
Yeah, we're saving Christmas. It would be a shame to just
wreck
it all
it
away.
24 days in.
Exactly, that's right. Yeah. If you want to be notified when Todd puts out his next blog post, make sure you follow him on Twitter. That's Todd Ginsberg. And if you just want to read the blog post, you have. I really love your domain for some, like todd.ginsberg.com is.
I was really on the spot, like 1995 when I got that domain. I was like really ahead of the.
That's really good.
Yeah. I'm proud of and I sat on it for a really long time. I was like, should I spend the $10 to do this? Should I do it? Like, today you couldn't sit on something like that for that long before doing it, but I got real lucky. So.
Yeah. So congratulations on that one. Yeah. Make sure you check out Todd's blog posts. They're a staple in my AOC routine for a good reason.
Thanks, man.
All right. Yeah, it's entirely true. Well, and just like that,
fun.
Yeah, an hour is over. That goes quite quickly when you're having fun.
Yeah, that was fun.
Any predictions for what's going to happen in the next few days?
Man, I'm so bad at this. I suspect you'll probably get some shortest path thing at some point. So here's a maze. Try to find the shortest path through the maze. Those are good breadth first or depth first search things. He'll probably do something with a grid, and you'll have to do what's called Manhattan distance or taxi cab distance. I think that has come up almost every year. Mm-hmm. Some people really like those, like let's invent a computer and puzzles that he's done the last couple of years. I'm not such a big fan of those, but I suspect there'll be maybe something like that. Yeah, the interpreter. He likes doing those, and some people really get into the interpreter ones. I think they're fun. I wrote the world's worst interpreter, I think last year or the year before, I had to keep extending it, and I had to keep rewriting it from scratch because it was terrible. Oh, you've got if you could just onboard that book before you're done, like before the puzzle comes up. Like
let me put that one up here. Yeah, just quickly read the book Crafting Interpreters. It's real thin.
It's light reading too.
Yeah. But by the way, it's an unironic recommendation.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Bob Nystrom, it's a great book.
No, it is a good book. But that's, I mean, if I had to guess, those would be the kinds of things that I would expect. The grid one for sure.
Well, I think there's only one way to find out, which is going to be waiting until tomorrow, where, of course, we are going to have another stream of Advent of Code with another mystery guest. So make sure you tune in tomorrow as well. I'm very excited to still actually have so many people show up. So very much appreciate you taking the time out of your Sunday, no less, to join us here for a little bit of fun. All right, Todd, it was really good having you.
Yeah, it was fun being here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I will see all of you hopefully tomorrow. Have a great start into your week, and take care.